All right, here's a way to turn height maps into smooth objects that you can use in Godot. What we got to do here for the TLDR speedrun is we got to open up Blender, delete the default cube, Shift A, create a grid mesh. Under Add Grid, make the X and Y subdivisions the resolution of your height map divided by 4. Since mine's 1920 by 940, I'm going to go ahead and do 480 by 235. And then we need to change the size here to 1. Once that's done, we're going to click on our wrench, add modifier, displace. We're going to make a new texture. We're going to open a new texture. We're going to go to our height map. And you'll start seeing it get a bit spiky here. Now to actually get it scaled, we need to set the X and Y scale to the distance in real life meters divided by 100. At the resolution of my height maps, I know it's 6.5 by 3.185 kilometers. So I'm going to do 65 for the X scale, 31.85 for the Y scale. But now you'll see that we lose the height fidelity. So the last thing we need to do is get the net height difference. And in my case, I know it's a height difference of 1.895 kilometers. So I'm going to do 18.95 for the Y. Now we get a surface that's relatively smooth. The last thing we need to do in Blender is we're going to add a smooth corrective, change the factor to 0.4. And this will be smooth enough for use in Godot when we create the tri-mesh collision. And to do that, we're going to export as OBJ. We're going to go to our Godot project, export it. Once Godot re-import, we're going to just make an empty node 3D, add a mesh instance, load our Blender object. And because we divided the scale by 100, we're going to go ahead into Godot and multiply by 100 for each dimension. And just for visibility's sake, so I'll go ahead and make this a bit easier to see. And lastly, with Mesh Instance 3D selected, click on Mesh, create Tri-Mesh Static Body. And now you'll have a collision surface that maps to the height map object. And then of course you can go into your static body and set the collision layer to your world layer as expected. Now more specifically, the tool I'm using is tangrams.github.io, which is under mapzin/tangrams, which is under the MIT license. And their dataset is OpenStreetMap's database, which is also available for commercial use for free. So this is the URL here. The first query string is how zoomed in you are to the map. 14.4 is a sweet spot in terms of fidelity versus getting something relatively accurate but smoothable. And the game area would be 6.5 kilometers by 3.185 kilometers. And to move left and right one square, you either add or subtract 0.0625 to the last query string. And one thing you'll want to do is not use the auto exposure for your follow-up renders and use the same values as the previous one. So I know my max was 2805 and my min was 910. And then lastly, you'll want to set your render multiplier to just 1. And then once we render this, save. We're going to go back into Blender, duplicate this. We're going to move it to the right. Where is it? Set this to just 65. The rest is 0. And now in the wrench, we're going to add a new texture, show the texture, change the texture, I believe I may have put that on the wrong side. -65. Yeah, there we go. So now you'll see that we get a crease between the two, but they line up. And then likewise, if you ever want to go up or down, instead of modifying the first or the last query string, we edit this last one to increase or decrease by 0.02. So 0.2. And then to actually refresh the page, I've been having to Control-Shift-R because the normal enter doesn't work. And then again, we turn auto exposure off. Use our same height values. Change the render multiplier back to 1. Render, okay. Name this 2, 3. Go back in Blender, duplicate, move it up. Set this to -65 still because we didn't move left or right any. And then we need to go -31.85 here and set the Z to 0. And here, we're going to add a new texture, show the texture, load the height map. And I may have flipped around my axes again. So it's just 31.85. There we go. Once you have these all together, you can go ahead and glue them and whatnot in Blender, but I'm just going to save it here in the project. Once it imports, I'm going to delete the static body and the collision. That way I can change this real quick. And I just want to make sure that it's still scaled by 100. And I'll have to increase my camera's render distance, but yeah, all three are there. All right, so it's really just a matter of repositioning your mesh grids in Blender along the right axes, using the corrective smooth with these settings, and doing the actual displacement with displace built in. Hope that helps.